Okay, so welcome to our Women in Ultra Running webinar. The more keen-eyed among you may have noticed that I am not Shane. So my name is Eleanor and I am the marketing coordinator for Ourea Events. And for this kind of women's focused webinar, I will actually be taking over. So I am joining the webinar here from our office in Kendal. And I'm joined tonight by two incredible runners. We've got Katie Mills and Laura O'Driscoll. We're just waiting for Katie to join because she is having a bit of trouble accessing the link. But she will be with us shortly because we have just been on a call with her. So for a bit of background, for anyone who doesn't know, Katie won the Dragon's Back race back in 2021 after an absolutely storming lead. And Laura won the Cape Wrath Ultra this year in what has actually been the toughest weather conditions to date. So that was very impressive. So while we kind of wait for everyone to admit into the lobby of the webinar, maybe you can just try messaging on the chat, introduce yourself, say where you're joining from. So I'll start. So Eleanor from Kendal. And throughout the webinar, if you have any questions at all, please do just pop them in the chat, or there's also a Q&A function. So yeah, what we'll try and do is answer as many of your questions as possible at the end of the evening, once we've kind of gone through the webinar questions. And I've also got Shane, helpfully, who is going to be on the chat, helping answer questions. So yeah, he's taking a bit of a back seat on this one and helping me from an admin point of view. Okay, so we're still waiting for Katie to join us. Hopefully she will come any second. Let's see if I can find her. Oh, Shane, have you had any luck getting
I've sent the link again, so I'll try in the background. I'll try and do what I can.
Cool, brilliant. Thank you, Shane. Cool. I guess we'll make a start then with Laura. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I think it'll be really good to chat about kind of female participation in events. So yeah, I guess to start with, it would be really great to hear about your running journey and what is it that got you into running?
Oh, it goes well back. I guess I've always kind of ran from a pretty early age. We had a football field beside the house and there was a running club there. So as soon as I could nearly walk, I was across the wall trying to catch up with whoever I could. So I started off kind of doing track and field, like sprinting and long jump for my events. And I would have been quite competitive in up until my early teens. Then I had a couple of injury setbacks, and then I got back to it, and I kind of realized I wasn't as fast anymore, and it wasn't as fun when you're at that age. So I kind of took a back seat for a few years. Always ran, but just not competing for a while. And then when I finished college, I kind of got more into triathlon. So I would have swam a lot and biked a lot and always ran, so it just kind of made sense and really enjoyed that. But then I tried a couple of adventure races, and the runs in the adventure races were off-road, and I just loved it. I was kind of it changed my perception, I guess, of what running is. And I'd grown up kind of hiking in the hills with my dad, and I realized, oh my God, I can do these hills so much quicker if I run. So I got really into that, then into the trail running scene, but I was still doing a bit of triathlon, a bit of adventure racing, and a little bit of trail running. And then I moved to Australia, and I guess it was to make friends initially. I find like the community with trail running is just, it's so supportive and welcoming. It doesn't really matter where you're coming from, what your background is, who you are. People just seem to embrace you and really want to kind of get you out there. So I did a few races over there and really enjoyed them, met a few really cool people, and yeah, just kept it going, got a little bit more competitive. And from Australia moved to Canada, and that's where I started going long. I guess the people I started to meet in a lovely little spot called Squamish in BC, which is myself and Katie have a lot of very good friends in common over there from running. Coincidentally, didn't realise. And yeah, in order to kind of hang out with them, I realised I have to go a lot longer. So the weekend runs weren't just like, 5 and 10Ks. They were like hours out in the Alpine, and it was just amazing. So that was kind of it. Again, kept competing, loving it more and more. Always kind of kept the adventure racing going, but when I was living away, not so much. And then moved back home to Ireland a few years ago, and yeah, haven't really looked back. So that's kind of my journey in running.
Oh, brilliant. Is there anyone who has particularly like inspired you in your running? Maybe any like running communities that you're part of as well?
Well, as I mentioned, kind of, I guess, like from living abroad, I always find like the trail running communities over there just kind of ad hoc, not kind of official teams or clubs or that. It was just really welcome and really kind of supportive, and all shapes and sizes. Just everybody kind of just getting out there and enjoying it. I guess like lucky to have quite a lot of very inspiring female athletes out there. I guess growing up, Sonia O'Sullivan, one of our better Irish runners here, would have really inspired me. I remember just watching her like in the world, just oh wow, this girl's, she's pretty cool. But the really inspiring thing about her was that she kept it going, like even when she wasn't super competitive. And like even now she's still running just for the love of it, and getting people into it, and that to me is more inspiring than the competitive side of it. I mean, there's so many athletes out there that I look up to, I guess, on a local level, just from the sports I do, and particularly in the adventure race. And there's a lot of women out there who just keep going, like into, age doesn't seem to be a factor, and they just keep battling on. I find that really inspiring. People coming back from injuries, like Hilary Allen, people like that. Yasmin Paris at the moment, but I'm raging. She just she's not in the Barclay anymore. But like, I mean, talk about an inspiring lady. I mean, we're actually so blessed. There's so many kick-ass athletes out there, and I'm inspired by the guys too. But obviously, I'm kind of I guess it's the grit of the women that really inspires me, and just that ability to just keep going, kind of despite the odds. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I certainly find like inspiration not just amongst like the really amazing people like Jasmine Paris, but also kind of like all of the women I run with. I think I'm quite lucky to run with a lot of incredible women, and it's awesome. I'm just going to see, someone called Katie has just joined, which I'm hoping is Katie Mills, but there isn't a surname, so sorry if this is a different Katie who I'm about to spotlight. We'll see.
She could be under Catherine, maybe either.
Hi, I'm here.
Yay! Oh, brilliant.
You really need technology to work. Anyway, thank you for Shane sent me the another link that got me in, but I'm here. I'm so sorry, just 12 minutes late.
No, that's all right. Thank you. It's hard with technology. I feel like whenever we do one of these, there's always kind of someone who struggles to get in. It's just you can't tell. It can sense fear, can't it? Tech, I find.
I think the funniest thing is that we were literally on like a practice call, and that was fine. And then for some reason, the real link wasn't so fine, but all good.
Oh well, you're here in the end. I guess could you maybe talk us through, sorry to throw you straight in the deep end, would you be able to talk us through your running journey and what got you into running?
Yes, I can. I'll be brief because I know probably I'm behind schedule. So I ran when I was like a teenager. When I was a kid, I did like cross country and stuff like that at school, and then became a teenager, got boobs, and was like, no, I'm not into this anymore. I have to wear 2 sports bras. So I took a big break, maybe like 7 years. I still played like competitive sport like hockey and stuff like that, but just sidelined the running until my sister ran the London Marathon when she was 18, so I must have been like 19, 20. And I was like, wait a second, she's not a runner and she's doing this. So I was like, oh, maybe I can do it. So I signed up for a half marathon, and then that was it, really. I moved to Canada. So BC is where I am right now, and moved to Whistler specifically, and started ultra running kind of without realizing it was a thing. So I really didn't enjoy camping. I hate having all the kit, so heavy. So all these amazing routes, I was like, oh, I wonder if I just start like 6 a.m. I can be done in the day and not have to carry all my stuff. And then I was like, oh, I wonder if people run more than a marathon. I was like, oh, this is actually a sport. So yeah, that was it.
Well, that's brilliant. That's such a cool way to get into it, I guess, just trying to travel further without having to carry as much stuff. Can certainly relate to that one. And is there anyone who's inspired you in your running, and maybe any like running communities that inspire you?
Yeah, rather than a specific person, yeah, I'd say the running community here in BC is really supportive, and Laura will know this from her brief time living here. It's super extensive. It's not like a niche sport, endurance running. It's pretty widespread, and the race organizations here, the number of trail running groups, women's only clinics, intro to trail running clinics that organizations put on, and just the amount of social events there are, that kind of draws you in and inspires you to try new and different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Katie, I think your camera's off, by the way. Just in case you...
I'll turn it off and back on again.
Yeah, that might work. We can see you now. Yay! So next question I'll ask to Laura first. So how do you manage to strike the balance between running and any like other hobbies or interests or work? I think that's something a lot of women will struggle with sometimes, is finding time for it all.
Yeah, I guess like to me, running's always just been there. It's like breathing, like as in it's nearly something that I work around and make sure it's the constant. It's kind of maybe a dangerous way to live, but it's worked so far. But yeah, like when I was in the office job, when I was teaching, I found it a little bit more difficult to fit in, and I was kind of chasing my tail 24/7. Still am a little bit, but the way I work now is a little bit more flexible. So just kind of since COVID, things changed a little bit, and I got more into teaching my yoga and doing a bit of run coaching and adventure racing coaching, and still do a little bit of design work on the side. So I did architecture with my background. So it's very flexible. And I kind of make it as flexible as I can. From a home point of view, I guess my other half, Johnny, he's into it too. So it's very easy for us to hang out. He wants to do what I want to do, and I want to do what he wants to do. So there's never really an argument about what we do this weekend, because we're usually wanting to do something fun together. So that's been good. And again, I have a lot of friends through kind of sport. So it's kind of easy to hang out with them. A little bit trickier then to hang out with my other friends who aren't into it, but then that's kind of a welcome break from the intensity too. So yeah, that's kind of how it works. But yeah, like definitely I've had to make decisions between like I was teaching at a secondary school, and I was kind of doing both. Well, recession hit in Ireland, so I went back to do teaching. And I found like, the teaching was great and the holidays are great, but you were given the holidays, as opposed to there was a lot of big events that I really wanted to do, and they were always seemed to be either in September or May. And they're like the really busy times for school teachers. So I kind of had to make a decision. Now, it wasn't the only reason I stepped back from teaching, but it definitely was informed by it. Yeah, so that's kind of it. Yeah.
I think that definitely does affect a lot of people, like teachers and also parents, like September being a super busy time as well. I've read about that. Katie, what about you? How have you managed to strike the balance?
So I first of all want to acknowledge that my life is very responsibility free at the moment. So striking the balance is probably a lot easier than for people with kids or people who work, 9 to 5, or even people who work, multiple jobs. So I work from home, and I have done for like 8 years. So that helps. I don't have kids yet. I just have a dog that likes running, so that's actually helps the balance a little bit. So, and also the access that we have here in North Van to the trails and just to mountains in general is super easy. So I'm definitely in a position where I have the benefit of time on my hands and the ability to get into the mountains and train. Having said that, I think what Laura said echoes with me too, is that I don't have too many hobbies. So jogging and hanging out in the mountains is one of my key hobbies. So I don't, like a lot of people around here have got like multiple sports, right? Like they mountain bike, they climb, they swim, whatever. Whereas I hopeless at swimming, hopeless at mountain biking, and climbing's just got too much equipment for me. So I think it's easier to strike the balance when you've only got a few demands on your time.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to skip over a question here, and we might come back to it later. But what is it that first drew you to the Laura, the Cape Wrath Ultra? And was there anything that put you off of entering in terms of like doubts or worries, maybe?
Yeah, so Cape Wrath Ultra was kind of one of those bucket list races that I kind of had there. And unfortunately for a couple of years, it was clashing with another bucket list race that I'd signed up for in Nepal. And so I was supposed to do that race in May in 2020, and then it was cancelled, and then it was cancelled again. And then my husband Johnny, he'd signed up to Cape Wrath, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's something to do. And my race has been cancelled, and I've done the training for a multi-day, or I had been intending on, with a few setbacks. So that's kind of what brought me to it that particular year. And I think it was probably the best thing I could have done, because the expedition race in Nepal was a lot longer. It was a lot more elevation, and I probably wouldn't have been anywhere near ready for it. So it actually worked out really well. And I mean, it's such an epic event, and it was so great to be able to do it with Johnny there as well. Yeah, I had a lot of doubts. Johnny told me I didn't need to know how to navigate, and I took his word. And then I started looking at the FAQs, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, I think we kind of need to know these things. So that was one that was one doubt I had in my head. And actually the night before the race, I had downloaded all the GPX files in my watch, and I was like super prepped, or thinking I was super prepped. And I was teaching a yoga class in the gym, maybe like 40 minutes away from our house, the night before we flew out, or got the ferry out. And I managed to leave my watch in the yoga studio, and it was locked, obviously, because it was the last class of the evening. So I had to ring one of the managers at like 12 o'clock at night, like, hoping he was up, that I had to get this watch. He thought I was crazy, but in fairness to him, he went in, and initially we couldn't see the watch, and he was like, no, I'm sorry. And I was like, no, it has to be here somewhere. So eventually we found the watch. So then I was all set for my nap. But that was a real disaster. Night before we were getting the ferry, I think at like 4 or 5, we were up the next morning. So it was really bad prep. And niggles. I had plantar fasciitis up until November the previous year, quite bad. I wasn't really running, and I didn't really feel as prepped as I would have liked to have been. But I'm lucky that I do cycle quite a lot. I had the elliptical, I swim a lot, so I still had the fitness there. But would the mechanics for running be there? It was a massive doubt in my head, massively, yeah.
Well, you clearly did really well. So despite the doubts, you managed to do it. I guess one thing I would say about navigation is you can use the GPX files. You don't need to be an expert navigator. You don't need to be an expert with a map and compass. The GPX files are there to follow, and a lot of people do rely on them. Having said that, some basic map skills and compass skills can go a long way, for sure. So it's definitely something that, if you have time to brush up on beforehand, I definitely recommend. So Katie, same question to you. What drew you to Dragon's Back, and was there any doubts or worries that you had about it?
Yeah, so I can totally relate to the watch situation. I think honestly, if I didn't have the map, like the little blue line on my watch, I don't know where I would have ended up. So I'm glad that you managed to find it. So Dragon's Back, yeah, it similar to Laura, it'd been a bucket list for a really long time. I actually kind of grew up hearing about the race. My dad was in the military, so the early versions of the race I kind of heard of. We lived on the Welsh borders for a few years when I was growing up as well, close to the Brecon Beacons. So so I know that area, kind of like South Wales, pretty well. And then as the race kind of reincarnated, when it was happening every couple years, there was a bunch of folks from BC who went over to do the event. So then I kind of heard about it being, up and running again. I was like, oh wow, okay, this is a thing. But this was back when it was every 2 years. And I guess the biggest thing that prevented me from signing up, this was a few years ago, was I just started doing longer runs. Maybe I'd run a couple 50 miles, and I just knew I wanted to have the experience under my belt, a few more years. And similar to Laura, I just wanted to make sure I could complete it. And I think that kind of echoes a general trend. Again, I don't want to stereotype, but typically women tend to underestimate their abilities. So you want to be sure that you can complete something before, diving in. Then I missed a couple years because it was, it happens every 2 years back then, and then COVID. So I eventually managed to sign up, set my alarm for 4 a.m. Canadian time to make sure I got in. And yeah, similar to Laura, I would say that training as it always it never goes perfectly. So yeah, I was just really fortunate to come to the start line fairly uninjured, fairly well trained, and yeah, I'm so it's the only event I've ever done where I've had it on my list for such a long period of time, which I think made it even more special to participate in. Yeah.
That's great. I think you've touched on a point that I think will come up later, about people being sure that they want to be fully prepared. So everyone does talk about how hard these types of races are, and we know that there are actually quite a lot of women out there who are perhaps questioning their ability, in terms of whether they can take part in these kind of things. Could you maybe give us a more realistic take on this, and on what the real challenges are, and how women looking to do these races might go about tackling them? So we'll start with Laura.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's the same challenges, I reckon, for these kind of distance races are there for guys and girls. I would have felt that with Johnny, because both of us were prepping for the same race. I definitely agree with what Katie was saying, that girls are a little bit, I mean, even the fact of knowing whether we needed to navigate or not, or the simple little things. But regarding kits, not just kind of winging it, you definitely kind of want to be totally set up, as in not to fail. So what is it? Yeah, challenges that women specifically face, I don't know. I think, yeah, sometimes women are definitely a lot harder on themselves. Guys definitely are a lot more confident, and I've seen that with my guy friends and my girl friends through running. Like, we come to the same race and the guys are like, yeah, I'm ready for this. Whereas like the girl might have been training her ass off like maybe twice as much, and she's like, oh, I don't know, you know. So it's there's definitely that mental aspect to it. How to tackle those barriers, I guess, yeah, like focus on being as prepared as you can, and not just, I mean, kit is so important, and I learned a lot from the girls that I was sharing the tent with in Cape Wrath. Like, I felt very, very green in that tent. I really wasn't prepped kit wise as well as I should have been at all, and I learned so much. In particular, Irene, one of the other Irish girl, who was sharing with me, and she was just on the ball, just regarding like foot care, kit, like all the best, and it made such a difference to your experience. So it is worth investigating and trying stuff out. Same with nutrition. I was not very well prepped at all, I guess, because I injured myself. It took me a lot longer. I was out on the course a lot longer than I planned, basically. So my food, I didn't have enough at all. So that was a massive thing too. So like prepping for the worst situation as opposed to just thinking, oh yeah, that'll be grand, that'll be enough. And then body wise, I would say, yeah, get out running, but actually for those kind of multi-stage races, actually just long days in the mountains and hiking and just getting out there. It doesn't have to be, you don't necessarily have to be so much run fit, but just that you're used to those long days on feet, and you know, you're happy that you can enjoy those long days on feet, because there's going to be a lot of them. But you know, the more you do of them, the easier they get. So I think I went a wee bit off tangent on that one, but yeah.
Sorry, absolutely. I guess it's about preparing adequately, isn't it? At the end of the day, like feeling prepared to go into it.
Yeah.
So Katie, same question to you.
So I first of all just like start by saying these races are like, they are super hard. They're not easy challenges, and I think that, you know, you can't, you know, like dumb down the event or make it seem easier than it is. There's a lot of talk about, you know, the more masculine terminology you use around a race, the more of a deterrent it is towards women. But you've got to strike the balance. Like, you, first of all, you can't dumb down the achievements of the people who have done the race before, and secondly, like Laura said, like the preparation is super key. I talked about a little bit in my previous point, but the fact that, you know, women are or men are more likely to overestimate their abilities, I think, is a huge part to play. Like Laura said, at the start line, you see a lot of guys like pumped up for the race, and I think that's really reflected in what the start line looks like at a lot of these events as well. A lot of the time, it's you know, it's a row of men, maybe like 3 or 4 rows deep, and then the leading females are behind that. So and I think that, you know, on one hand, a race organization can encourage women to the front as much as they want, but I definitely know I'm part of the issue. For example, at Dragon's Back, I started at the back of the race, like not even like in the middle, because I knew the first, for those of you who don't know, the race, it starts in Conwy Castle, and the first, I don't know however long it is, you run through the castle walls, and it's not timed. Like, it's actually, the start line isn't really the start line. The start line is when you first punch in, and your time starts then. So I figured I don't want to get caught up in the rush. I kind of want to enjoy the scenery. So I started at the very back. So anyways, I'm definitely part of the issue with what the start line looks like. And I just, for anyone who's watching this live or the recording, Stephanie Case wrote a really great article in 2018 on Outside Online about you know, systemic gender issues in ultra running, and she mentions at the Boston Marathon in 2018, is a really bad weather event. The dropout rate for men was 80% higher than that for females. So it just kind of goes to show that once women are there at the start line, you know, they're there to compete. So or they're there to participate and finish the best of their ability. And I'll just give one other example as well. I was talking to the race director at High Lonesome 100, which is an awesome 100-miler in Colorado. And and he was saying that they, for people who DNF'd on their race last year, the vast majority of women who DNF'd were caught, like they missed the cutoffs, whereas the vast majority of men who DNF'd had at least 3 hours before the cutoff. So just another stat to show that I think that women are more capable than you think. But like Laura said, it doesn't hurt to be prepared. Be prepared as well. So I guess that's my kind of realistic take on the on women taking on these tough events. And then the real kind of challenges specifically to Dragon's Back, which for me is the hardest event physically and emotionally that I've ever done. What Laura said about gear is super important. I think footwear is such a huge part of it. And like my biggest thing, when people ask me about Dragon's Back or racing in the UK, I'm like, you just have to get on the course, because there's all these videos on the Dragon's Back website about taping your feet and how to do foot care and all the rest of it. And I thought I was a pro because I tape my feet like a couple times here in BC, where the soil drains really easily and you don't get a lot of bog or standing water. It's a lot more kind of rocky terrain when you're in the mountains. So I set foot in the UK. I was there a couple months before the race to see family. I go for a run in Wales, step in a bog, and immediately all the tape I'd done just comes off. So rather than trying to troubleshoot, I was like, oh, okay, I just won't bother with that then. It clearly doesn't work. So to my detriment, because my feet were such a mess by the end of the race. But yeah, I would say the biggest challenge I found was getting on the course, as an international participant, and training for the conditions, which again is easier said than done, but probably my biggest piece of advice.
I'm sure Laura can definitely relate to the running into the bogs incident with tape wrap.
People will say, like, I mean, if you hadn't known there'd be that much bog, would you have done more running in bogs? And I'm like, no, it's horrible. I'm not going to train.
It's horrible.
I would probably have done more like strengthening of my lower legs and my ankles and being prepared for that. But like running through bogs in all your training runs is not fun.
Yeah.
I remember those at the end of I think it was day 4 for me, which was I think it's a section where you've got like 8 to 10k of road at the end. Everyone like throughout the day was moaning about the road, being like, oh, it's going to be awful, so bad on your joints. And I got to the road bit and I was like, hallelujah, no more bogs today. It was such a moment of rejoicing.
Yeah.
I feel like that road section is very divisive. I think people love it or they hate
Bring it on, that's what I say.
We've kind of sort of touched on this a little bit already, this question, but I mean, Katie, you mentioned women often actually do really well at the longer distance endurance events. So why do you think this is? Laura, I'll go to you first on this.
I guess, I mean, we when women get to that point where they're signing up for these races and they're ready to run these races, like we're a lot more determined. We've got a lot of grit regarding we got there, and I guess it shouldn't be that way, but often I do feel like I have to prove myself. I got here, but now I'm going to prove myself. And it's the same, not just in running. I'd be like that in my work life as well. And again, it shouldn't be like that, but it's definitely something that I think does bring a lot of women through, because they're like, no, I'm here, like, I'm doing this and I'm going to get through, and I deserve to be here, and I'm going, so there's that kind of deeper kind of wanting to keep going. Or the pain, we know pain, we suffer pain from our teens quite regularly every month, and so I think if we can get through that, some worse than others. So I think to endure pain, I don't think it's that our pain threshold is anyway higher, but definitely our ability to endure is maybe just that little bit higher because we've had a lot of pain. And then women who've had babies as well have dealt with that also. Like so many mental things, really. I mean, that grit and that determination. And then I guess like we do obviously, like in the shorter events, we don't naturally have as much say like muscle mass as a guy would, but in the longer stuff we do actually have in general a better store of those long muscle fibers, so those slow twitch, which is actually really good for long. And the longer we go, the more that gap is starting to close, because we can actually engage with those stores. We also store fat pretty well. So it's not good sometimes, but it's good for those longer endurance races, so or events. So yeah.
Yeah. Katie, what about you? Why do you think women do so well?
Yeah, totally agree with what Laura said. Part of what she was referring to was obviously like women get periods, and I think that's a huge advantage that women have in training. It's like a natural training cycle that you can build around, and men don't get that. So I think that's a big advantage when it comes to training for these events. I think that the mental side, which Laura, you touched on as well, physically, you never are going to cover the distance of these longer events. Like I'm talking like 100Ks, 100 milers and staged events. You're never going to practice the event by running the distance of the event. Like if I'm running a 5K, maybe I'll do some 5K tempo training workouts or whatever, even even half marathons, but it's a physical detriment to pursue that amount of mileage in training. So the physical aspect, once you hit that point, it's not really physical anymore. It's about the determination to get there. That and Laura mentioned too, that women often have to overcome a number of barriers to even get to that start point. So the determination is definitely there. And then just one thing that comes to mind too is the ability to manage expectations and deal with adversity, which women face in general on a day-to-day basis, whether that's systemic sexism in the workplace or whatever. It's something that as a female you grow up with having to tackle adversity and manage expectations. So in an event like this, or any event that's of a significant distance, nothing's going to go to plan. You have to kind of deal with stuff on the fly. The longer the event, the more a plan goes out the window. So having to kind of think on your feet and not go into an event thinking, I've got this in the bag, thinking I don't know how this is going to go. I have to just tackle it like one step at a time, break it into pieces it helps so much mentally. I will also say though that I'm not kind of knocking men. I know a lot of really, very mentally strong male athletes as well, but I think in general it seems women just have the edge. Sorry guys.
That's really cool. I actually have to say it's really refreshing hearing you saying about women training around periods being an advantage, because I know personally I'm sometimes like, oh no, this is horrible, how am I expected to train while on this? So it's actually really refreshing and nice to hear that like kind of spun as being an advantage in a way.
Totally. Well, they say like training's supposed to be like periodization, pun intended.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it, and that's definitely something I'll be taking forwards for sure. So again, this has sort of been touched on. I think it would be good to like kind of face it head on now. So what do you think the barriers are that face women interested in entering these kind of ultra races? And do you perhaps have any like examples of real life women who've overcome these and managed to succeed? Shall we start with Katie this time? Actually, I'm conscious that we're kind of...
So again, I can't speak from experience too much with this, but and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but the kind of barriers that we're talking about is obviously more of a systemic issue of women in sport. So and it's likely to get aggravated the more intense or longer duration or more endurance the event is. So, and when I talk about a systemic issue, I mean that that women, girls especially, you know, that the opportunities to participate in sport is typically lower than men's. So I'll just give an example. The Women's Sports Federation in 2017 released a study that girls in the US have 1.3 million fewer opportunities to play high school sports. And then by the age of 14, the rate of dropout of sports is the rate is twice as high for girls as it is for boys. So you can see that it's not, and I know this is a very specific study to the US, but it's obviously part of a kind of a bigger issue. And then just historically too, you know, women weren't invited to the endurance world until very late in the game. They weren't allowed to participate in the marathon, the Olympics, till 1984 it was, and the female weightlifting program wasn't introduced until 2000. So I think all of us were, you know, alive in the year 2000. So it's definitely kind of living history that that we grow up with. So I think that's a few examples of like the systemic nature, and obviously this is a conversation related to ultra running specifically. The main barrier there, and I'm sure Laura can touch on this a little bit too with some examples, is the ability to dedicate the time needed for the sport of ultra running, which by its nature takes a lot of time. So women can, you know, end up being less time affluent than male counterparts due to the fact that, you know, we physically give birth. Men, you know, they don't. That this, you know, they can support and you know, in so many ways, but they're not the ones whose bodies are physically changing for 40 weeks and then recovering for however long that takes afterwards. So, and I'm not, you know, obviously there's no resolution to that physical aspect of it. But in terms of real life examples, the folk who I've spoken to, women friends of mine who do have kids, again, like we're all already in the sport of ultra running. So a lot of these women I've spoken to have already overcome those hurdles. I haven't spoken to people, you know, who aren't in the sport about the barriers that they perceive are there. But in terms of the people I have spoken to, a lot of it comes from the support network that you have. So for example, Laura, you mentioned that your significant other is also into ultra running. So a lot of people said, oh, their husbands are, if they're not, you know, endurance athletes, they are, you know, avid skiers, or they mountain bike. So they're definitely active. And the way that they get around the kind of the time issue is to seasonalize their training. So for example, like your husband can take more time to do his hobbies in the winter months, and then your season is the summer months, and then on your off season you're able to spend more time with your kids, etc. So there's a few people who mentioned that to me actually, about either having, you know, seasonally throughout the year, or, you know, 1 year is a focus on your partner and another focus is on you. Again, kind of these people speaking from the position of having you know, a significant other, whereas a lot of people I realize are doing the kids thing solo. And as well as that, building your support network of friends and family. So creating time for yourself by leaning on others in the community, you know, that like having co-parenting options, or you know, like a shared childcare program. Or if you're lucky enough to have, you know, your kids' grandparents in the picture, or other relatives, the ability to lean on them as well was kind of some other examples that were brought to me. But yeah.
Well, thank you. That was a really thorough answer. That was great. Laura, what about you? What do you think the barriers are that face women entering these events?
Yeah, I agree with Katie there on the, I guess, like when it comes to like shorter distances or sports that maybe don't take up as much time, but not even that, like say if you sign up to an event that's going to take you 10 days to get through, like that's a really big commit. And if you're of that age, like where maybe children are something that you want, you kind of have to play around with that. And like, especially if an event's cancelled and you've kind of put off having children and now this event's being postponed a year. So what do? Do you just not do it? Do you go, like, same with, again, like, I know Katie said that with the menstrual cycle being of in a positive light, but sometimes it's not. Like sometimes, like even last weekend I had my first kind of adventure race of the year and I had my period and it wasn't great. I was feeling just, and like sometimes I feel amazing, but I wasn't. But then like after the race, I had a good race considering, but like after the race, you might have some of your guy friends come up, oh geez, yeah, didn't have the best day, did you? And you're kind of like, oh man, like you wouldn't believe, so it's kind of that is a barrier, and more so when you get into the endurance, because you're trying to plan around that cycle and it doesn't always match up with the events that you want, and everybody's so different in how the menstrual cycle affects them. So for some it's really predictable, for others it's not. So that is definitely something that I find could be a barrier to even some of the female athletes that I coach, where they've cancelled doing a race because they know how their tummy is on those particular days of their period. So they're like, no, actually I'm just going to pick another race, that's not going to happen. So and without an explanation needed. But yeah, I definitely would see that as a barrier in a way. But obviously, in other ways, it's great, as you say, Katie, with your periodization and all that. If you can make it work, it's fantastic. But it's not for everybody either. Like some people suffer a little bit more, and it's not as predictable. So, yeah, yeah. That was a very negative take on that question. Sorry.
It is true. That's definitely something that will put people off. And one thing I would like to highlight actually is on our events, we do always have menstrual products available in all of the toilets and have female only toilets, which I think obviously that's only a small thing that can go towards kind of breaking down the barriers, but it is something that we have in place, which I think can help, because at least you don't need to worry about if I run out of tampons, or that's kind of one fewer thing to worry about, I guess. But it still doesn't help if you're having a terrible period, but there's not much you can do about that, sadly. So I'll start with Katie again with this one. Is there anything you think that race organisers or event organisations should be doing to encourage more female participation? I think for us, this is a particularly interesting one. I'd love to hear your thoughts on.
Yeah, so I'm not an event organizer, I'm not a race director, so I actually reached out to a few local and other race directors here in North America to kind of get their take. I obviously have ideas, but wanted to see if they were feasible. So I think first and foremost, and again, I don't have too much experience of races in Europe. I've done a few, but having really clear pregnancy deferral policies, I think, is absolutely huge and just kind of basic at this point. And I will call out, there's the Spine race in the UK does not have one, at least not one publicly available on their website. I actually emailed them 4 times at the end of last year asking them about it and received nothing in response. So just having that in place is just basic. And I think that, I can't remember what the organization is in the UK, but in the US here, there's an organization called Trail Sisters, which kind of has like a baseline set of standards that races can adhere to and then receive like an approved kind of seal. I would say that the race organizations I spoke to in the US, the feeling was that the kind of set of standards like this are really for about 5-10 years ago, and right now they're slightly underwhelming in terms of the recommendations that they put forward, but definitely they should start. They can act as a baseline in that. So the kind of the feedback that I got was that every race is unique and every race is different. So before embarking on any kind of policy shift or change or outreach or marketing effort, that race organizations need to really dig deep into the communities who they want to be attracting. So it's difficult because you obviously have a bank of folk who have completed like Dragon's Back or Cape Wrath that can give feedback that almost gives you a bit of a survivor bias, in that these people have participated, or at least they've got to the start line. But having access to community groups or surveys or studies within your community, or running communities in the area that the race is taking place, is huge, because we can talk about barriers to entry all we want, but like I said, every race is different and unique. I have a lot to talk about in this bit, so if you want to jump in or make comments, please feel free. The next thing I wanted to mention was providing equitable entry for men and women. And this in particular is for events that sell out really fast, or that are super popular, ones that have lottery systems. And that's to hold 50% of those spots for women. Some might call it positive discrimination, whatever. It's not. If you look at the history of women's sport, you don't think, oh, we're at the Olympic 100-meter final and 6 spots for men and 2 spots for women. No, you've got a women's race and a men's race. So in the same way, you can create a men's race and a women's race with any endurance event that you put on. Obviously, it doesn't apply as much if it's a race that doesn't sell out, or has kind of an unlimited number of spots. Here in North America, there's very strict caps that races have to have. I'm not sure if it's the same in the UK, due to permitting reasons and things like that. So the 50-50 split, I raised it with a couple of race organizations here, and other than ensuring that the technology that a race organization has that manages registrations is able to do that, and most of them are. I actually spoke to one of the race directors at the High Lonesome, who implemented a 50-50 lottery status in 2020, and then 2021, 2022, obviously the race happened. And hearing the stories from that race was so awesome. You guys, if you're in the States or whatever, these two as a husband and wife team, they are just unbelievable. They said the reaction they got was huge, the negative and positive, obviously, as you can imagine. But they had 50% of their field were women, and they said the vibe at the race was unlike anything they'd ever experienced at an ultra running event, which is really cool. And in the top 12 positions, there were 6 men and 6 women. So by holding those spots, they managed to have a super competitive women's field, which in races that with lower participation, it tends to not be the case. The other thing too is they noticed that for a race organization, the press that they got at Trail Runner Mag went nuts and wrote tons of articles. Outside Online wrote tons of articles about it. So just an interesting concept for races that sell out. And then I guess the other thing that comes from that is, if you have a more competitive women's field, it's easier to tell those stories in any kind of media that the race releases. So an example, in my year at the Dragon's Back, the men's race was super tight at the front. One Welsh runner and one runner who lived in Wales. So a lot of the post-production media, not the stuff put on that was the race drive by the Dragon's Back, but there was a BBC documentary that was released afterwards that focused pretty much exclusively on the men's event. Now, I'm not sitting here saying should have been shown more. Like, that's absolutely not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's easy to tell the stories. Those are the obvious stories to tell. So those are the stories that will get picked up on. So by increasing the competition in the women's field, you can have slightly more control over the narrative that kind of outside media companies will come and tell about your event. Any comments? I've got some more points to go.
Absolutely. I mean, I do some of the like internal media when we're on event, and it is hard when you've got sort of lower female participation because you really want to tell the female stories, but there are fewer stories to tell because there are fewer people in the field. So
it totally requires digging deeper, and like I know how hard the media folk work at these events. Like, it's insane the amount that they're producing, and I actually had no idea when I came to the Dragon's Back that there was so much coverage, and it's such a huge and I think actually important part of the event to get people at home really involved. So like half my family don't even know about like ultra running, and now they're like super into it and they follow the Dragon's Back every year and everything like that. So it's super important. I know how hard they work, but the stories are there. You just have to, you have to dig deeper. So like an example, the girl who came third in the Dragon's Back my year, Zoe, she basically didn't run until like 4 weeks before the event. She had like a chronic injury, so she like walked with her dog, and that was the training that she did, and she was only able to run in those final 4 weeks, so basically 2 weeks because you have to taper beforehand. And I heard about this on the final day when we were running a lot together. I just thought that was the coolest thing. Like, I could not believe it. And talk about making like an event feel achievable for a lot of women, right? So there's lots of stories to be had. And it's kind of on, and I'm not speaking specifically about the Dragon's Back here, but it's on race organizations to, they're the one telling the stories. So they're like, it's up to them. They create the stories. The stories just don't land on the page themselves. So, and I know Dragon's Back does a really good job of this, having equal men and women on the website and in marketing materials, and doing something like this. You know, this is pretty rare in that I've seen. The final. Just one more thing on media coverage. Sorry, I've got my notes to the side. That's why I'm looking off. Is a lot of the stories that are told, and this is like endemic in endurance running, is about the front of the field. So, for example, I went with Canadian Running Magazine. A friend of mine was the trail running editor there, and we went to go cover Western States in California. And the brief was, you guys are going to follow the front of the field, and we want to see about the top 10 men and the top 10 women who come through. And that's always the case. Like, the main stories of the event are who won, you know, who were the top runners, who ran the fastest. And when we're talking about encouraging female participation, like, that doesn't feel relatable. At the Dragon's Back, you know, the top dudes were done in, I don't even know, like 7 hours or something, and we, the top women, we were done in like 10 to 12 hours, whereas these guys are coming in at 10 p.m. like on the cutoff every single day for 6 days. It's an extraordinary amount of time to be out there, and I think race organizations can highlight those stories at, you know, the middle, at the back of the field, specifically when we're talking about female participation, in how women have what they've overcome to make it, and how they're able to endure day after day. A friend of mine puts on she hosts a trail running podcast specifically for women. It's called Trail Running Women, clues in the name, and it really exploded since she started it. And the main reason she thinks is because she doesn't just interview elite female runners, She interviews, you know, runners in their 80s, people who didn't start running, women who didn't start running until they were over 50, the people who finish, you know, dead last in every single race but still have the motivation to keep going, women who've overcome XYZ barriers to get there. So just the ability to create relatable content rather than something that feels unattainable.
Absolutely, yeah. I think those are the stories that are really interesting. Often is like the back of pack, mid pack stories. So
I can't tell you, like when I saw that, I went back home and I watched all the videos from my event, and there was one about this guy who completed day 5, which was absolutely extraordinarily difficult. And he is, you know, he comes into the finish line, he is sobbing. He said, you know, he was saying how he had been dreading it all week, and he got it, like he'd done it, and he was so proud of himself. And I was moved to tears. It was unbelievable hearing that story. So yeah, those are the best stories, I think. Like at Western States, for example, we they call it the golden hour, like the last hour of the event that you have to finish. And everyone, all the elites, everyone who's done the race comes to the track where you run the final lap and cheers the final runners in for the last mile. And it was pretty overwhelming to watch that kind of dedication.
I think like you guys do a really great job with the video footage of the events, and like draw so many people in, like that what Katie was saying. Like some of my family and friends wouldn't have had a clue. What the hell was I going over to Scotland, running across the bogs? That's a lovely holiday, you know. And then the more you guys were posting, you were like, holy shit, this thing's like really epic and like really tough, and like there's like, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And then the videos were so nice because like that, like you didn't pick, you just kind of like, there was all these little mini stories and you're kind of following it. And I even had friends after, like it was almost like they'd been watching Big Brother. They're like, so what happened to him? Was he out? Or what was the end of that? Like, and it really brought people in, and it made it like that so much more relatable because it was a really human side to it. It wasn't just these people racing and running, and you know, it was like, it was familiar. It was really, really lovely. And like
I had the same experience, Laura, at the end. So the final day, my sisters and my family came, and they were like pointing out, they were like, oh, we saw him, oh, we know him, we know what happened to him on day 2. I thought that was so great.
I had like my friend, my sister's friend was like a primary school teacher over in the States, and she had her whole class follow me for the week. This little Irish girl running across the mountains in Scotland, like using it as a geography lesson or something, and they were getting so into it. Yeah, it was really cool. And I guess, like as you say, Katie, it's more about, it's not, it's important, like there's that competitive side to it, but it's the whole field and the stories, like, and I think I really got a really I guess a bittersweet taste of it, because when I did injure, I was like a lot further back than fields that I'd be used to. I was walking a lot more than I'd be used to, but in a nice way. I got time to like talk to everybody, and it was really lovely. And like, just even, you really were gunning for the people in your tent, like, you know, that they were going to get through it. It was such a lovely, it was really familiar. It was lovely. But like as well as that, like it's the same in any race. Like even the race I did last weekend, like nobody really, only the person themselves who's on the podium or going for the podium really cares. Like everybody else has their own like goal. Like I was talking to different people after last week's race, and you know, one person was just so chuffed. He'd gone to the longer distance and he'd managed to meet the cutoff. And he was like, it was like he had won the race. And I was just talking after. And then another lady I know, and she was just chuffed that she'd beat 70 guys. She was like, I beat 70 guys. And you know, like all these like mini goals. But like, to me, like Eleanor, you were asking earlier about people that inspire you, like they inspire me so much. I feel like crying. Like, you know, you're just like, oh God, that's, you know, like so much more important. Like the you know, yeah, it's great and it's important, like when you train really hard for something and you're rewarded and you get to the podium and you get to where you want to be. But it's the little stories along the way and all the achievements of everybody. It doesn't have to be a win. It can be just to get to the start line is sometimes the biggest achievement, you know, whether you get to the finish or not. Like it's the process. And yeah, like it can be, I think highlighting that is so important, and you guys do that. So, you know, like there were people who you had the little videos of and they didn't finish, but they still had this lovely story, you know, and they did part of what they wanted to do, or maybe they were just happy to get to where they went, you know, or where they finished. So it was,
absolutely, yeah. I'm aware we've gone slightly off topic, but it's, I mean, it's a lovely thing to talk about, because I mean, I do the blogs, so I'm always looking to like highlight all of the stories really, but just in the interests of not going loads over on time, so Laura, is there anything that you think race organisers or event organisations should be doing to encourage more female participation?
I think Katie covered a lot of it there.
Yeah.
Shane did a lovely article there a
really
couple of weeks ago, kind of singling out different things that you guys do at the races, and which is really important. I guess that's when you're in the race, encouraging female participation. One thing, there's the only other thing that I thought of, and it's only because I'm doing a race in September, the Transalpine, and this year they've offered, like, it's a duo race, so you can do it like as pairs, and it's a 2-day, so it's a little bit less intimidating, and it's a really nice step if you did maybe want to do the longer race someday. And I know even Cape Wrath, you have the shorter staged version this year, and I think initiatives like that are really encouraging, because it sometimes the big thing does seem a little bit overwhelming, and by putting something a little bit shorter, or something that maybe you can do with a partner, it can encourage people to take that step, and maybe that's the step they take and they're happy enough with that, or maybe it encourages them to maybe go longer and solo, or maybe not. But I think things like that definitely will bring more female participation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we have in mind sort of with having the shorter courses on offer is, hoping that it can be a stepping stone to people who are less sure. One thing I'd like to just pull up on, actually, we've moved on slightly, but Katie mentioned the pregnancy deferral policies being like really crucial. I would like to highlight our pregnancy deferral policy that we do have for the Cape Wrath Ultra and the Dragon's Back race, and that is we've now changed it to, if you let us know any time up to a day before the race that you're pregnant, then you can defer your place to any event within the next 3 years, and you won't have to pay any more money if the price increases, you know, any event in the next 3 years, basically, because I think we are aware that, I mean, pregnancy isn't always going to be planned, and you can't always plan life around it.
Even if it is, you have to, you know, these events you have to sign up and prepare, you have to sign up for so far in advance. Like, I'll just name and shame the Spine race again. The only mention of pregnancy on their website is that you can't participate if you're pregnant. Well, how does that help in any way? So anyway.
No, definitely. I think it's a super important thing to have in place. Definitely. So is there anything else that you think needs to change in order to encourage more women to start lines and to take on these big challenges? Maybe something more general rather than just what race organisers can do. I'll start with you again, Katie.
So it's I guess it's quite a general question, because we've kind of touched on it throughout the points here, but rather than anything changing specifically, I think in the conversations that I had with, you know, other endurance athletes and with race organizations, is that once you, as a race organization, you have to provide, you know, equitable registration, equitable opportunities, but then it's kind of on the onus of everyone else to sign up. And I'm also aware that during this conversation, you know, we've been talking about women as like a minority in terms of participation in endurance running, when actually, you know, I think Michelle Obama said, like, we need to stop talking about women like they're the minority. We're not. We're 51% of the world's population. So there's so far that race organizations can go. And the rest of it, again, like I can't get into too many details, because as we've talked about, it's kind of more systemic than anything else. As I think that we talk about like the systemic nature, and we talk about race teams, which is kind of like the top tier, like the end result. Whereas I think a lot of stuff can be done grassroots and within communities, whether that's, you know, women in their communities leading groups or seminars or sessions, or being, you know, leaders within their communities. And the other thing would be, you know, on the race side, for race organizations to really dig deep into their communities and be super visible. You know, if increased female participation is a priority of theirs, to make sure that they're active members of, you know, their social running groups, you know, that they have the female members of their board are active within running communities as well. So that's what I'd add.
No, that's great. Do you have anything to add to that, Laura?
Yeah, hard to add. I guess, yeah, like when you talk about general, not just kind of like running or ultra or race specific, but I guess, and I think things are changing for sure. But like, you know, growing up, I was very lucky, very blessed that I was in a family and I was surrounded by friends that were very encouraging to adventure. You know, they're like, yeah, get out there and do it. And not every girl has that support, for sure. And even a lot of my friends wouldn't have grown up with that kind of, it would have been more like, oh no, you wouldn't want to be doing that. Like, oh geez, no, you get dirty, or, you know, this kind of attitude. And it is starting to get a lot better, but it's still very much there. And it's funny, just scrolling the other day. And it was a girl on Instagram or something, but she was talking about her toddler, and her toddler is a little girl, and she's really, really short hair. So depending on what she wears, she could look like a boy or she could look like a girl. So sometimes she'll dress her like in kind of tomboy clothes, and the reaction of people are like, oh yeah, you know, they're like, you know, oh, you're gonna have fun now, and you're gonna get mucky, and you're gonna do this, you're gonna have adventures, and it's all like really like, yeah, you go run there or whatever. And then when she dresses her daughter up as like more kind of pretty girly kind of stuff, it's like, oh, you're so pretty, you're so cute, and you know, it's a total different reaction. So it's still very much there, and I think it's very hard to change that. And because of that, there probably are more men going out there to do the crazy adventures, because it's just something that's been kind of instilled in them from a very, very early age. Whereas for girls, unless they are lucky and they've been kind of brought up with that around them, or they've had a very supportive network, or they've met people in their life that have kind of gotten them into it, it's not as the norm. So yeah, how do you change that? I mean, that's society.
That's
so
a big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I feel like you're right. Like there's a lot of stuff that race organizers and event organizations can be doing to level the playing field, but it can only go so far, because there's kind of a much wider issue at work there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, race organizations are kind of like, they have the ability to, you know, they have the reach, you know, the ability to reach lots of people. They are, you know, like events are where you see the largest gatherings of people. So, you know, having equal access to these events it's not going to close the gender gap, but that's the only active thing that you can do, because otherwise you're just waiting for societal norms to you know, to improve. So yeah.
But probably stuff that you are doing already, all the kind of media coverage and getting that out there, like go back to the spine when Jasmine Paris won it overall, and she was breastfeeding, and it went viral. Like the whole world knew. You know, and like the guy who won that year, nobody knew, nobody said anything about him, and he freaking won, you know. So you're like, but it is, I mean, it is a lot to do with how you put these events out there and show these like kick-ass women doing these things, and everyday women, not just the ones at the front, and kind of showing that, yeah, actually we can do this, like, you know. I think it's important.
Absolutely. Like, I think showing people like Jasmine Paris is really, really awesome because she's great. But like you say, showing the everyday women as well is so important, because at the end of the day, not everyone is going to be able to go out and smash the spine after giving birth. You know,
it's relatable, really, isn't it? Like, yeah.
It's good to, like, portray a wide range. So yeah, I've just got one question left before we kind of move on to the questions from our viewers, and this is kind of actually moving away from the female participation thread slightly, but it's been really, really great to hear both of your inputs on that, and it's definitely been super interesting. But it's a more kind of general, light-hearted closing question. What are your running goals for the future? So Katie.
So in the immediate future, my goals are kind of shifted a little bit. It's why this conversation is kind of important to me. I'm actually 4 months pregnant, so my running goals at the moment are just to continue jogging as much as I can. I ran a 5K race on the weekend in Vancouver, and just signed up for another one on April 1st. So I guess my goal is to try and run a similar time with like 4 weeks of training plus 4 weeks of growing. Who knows? But yeah, the moment I'm honestly just taking one day as it comes, everything. And anyone who's watching who has had kids knows that everything changes so much kind of day to day and week to week. So I had thought about maybe running the spine this winter, but obviously that's not going to happen. A friend of mine really wants to do the like a long event in Europe, in the Alps. So that'll be something that would be fun to do, kind of in the next year or so. But in terms of anything right now, my plans are in the air.
Oh, congratulations, Katie.
Thanks.
Oh, wow. That's
really exciting. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Laura, what have you got planned?
I feel it's all going to be a come down after that. Yeah, I've a couple of ultras coming up earlier in the year, and then myself and Johnny were actually going to be in France for the summer. I'm going to be teaching yoga and helping lead a few trail running groups with a good friend of ours, Shawnee Clifford. And then the big kind of multi-stage this year, we're doing Transalpine. So I'm going to do the solo Transalpine in September. Signed up for Spine Challenger North. I didn't sign up for the whole thing because I have a lot of issues with Raynaud's in my extremities, so I need to sort that out. But I thought if I sign up for half it, I might have a chance of finishing. Yeah, so they're the kind of plans for this year.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, thank you both for sharing those. I've just got a couple of questions from the general public. Shane has actually been very good at chipping in and answering them as we go, so we've only got a few ones. But I've got someone has asked if any advice on understanding what kit you need and fueling for the day, and kind of pre and post race, because obviously it's a stage race. So yeah, advice on kit and fueling. Katie?
Sure. So I'm not sure if the viewer's asking about Dragon's Back or Cape Wrath, but I guess it's to do with kind of any endurance event. The advice would be similar. With fueling, you just, I guess, when you're doing your longer training runs, you're obviously taking in calories every half an hour or an hour or whatever, and you know what works for you. For some women, that's 200 calories an hour. For some, that's 350. Just kind of depends on what your body can tolerate for an extended period of time. And then my biggest piece of advice is just take easy stuff that you can get down, and a slight variety, because the gels that you've got on day 1, you're probably not going to want on day 5. And again, training and practice really helps with this, I found. So for Dragon's Back specifically, I would do back to back training runs. So like 3 days in a row of like 5-6 hour plus runs. I wouldn't call them runs, probably shuffles at that point. So you kind of get to know on the 3rd day what your body's going to want and what it's starting to reject. For food for afterwards, this was an area I was super unprepared for. I kind of, the race does a great job of feeding you for breakfast and dinner, but you just have no idea how hungry you get at night in these events. So I remember like all I had was a packet of crisps in my bag, and at like 1 a.m, I was wide awake. My stomach was screaming, like it was so hungry. So I was really aware of not trying to wake up the girls in my tent. So I opened the packet of crisps like really quietly in the corner, and each crisp I would suck it so it wouldn't crunch when I chewed. So the next day was thankfully a day where we passed a grocery store, so I managed to hop in and grab some like pasta salads and stick that in my bag for later. But do a better job than I did on just snacks for in camp. And if a lot of what you're eating during the day is sweet, then savory stuff is like just goes down so nicely in the evenings. Because the other thing too is like I don't know about you, Laura, but I found that the breakfast, I was really nervous. So it was like a struggle to get it in.
Yeah.
And then when you finish, you're just like wrecked, right? So the last thing, again, I would sit with my over my bowl for like 2 hours trying to get it in.
With breakfast, because you're straight into the run, like I need a little while to get it. So I was eating probably too small then for breakfast. But one thing that I did, something that you would need to think about too, like if you're doing the multi-stage and you can't access fresh food, like I was very dependent on bananas. I love bananas, or like bananas and pita pockets, stuff like that. So none of the normal, or cheese, like I'd have quite a lot of cheese and jam sandwiches and stuff like that, but that's not there. So think very much about what is actually going to be available and what's going to still be okay to eat after 7 days, because trees and sausage and cheese does not taste good after 4 days.
Yeah.
But you'll still eat it because you're hungry, but it's not really great. But yeah, that was definitely something to think about. And I think I mentioned earlier as well, over plan. Like don't think, oh yeah, it'll take me such a time, so I'll need this much food. Take way more food than you think you need, because I really did. I really struggled with the food situation toward the end. And you're not always going to be, I can't remember passing the shop, maybe we did, but it's not going to be that accessible. So make sure, I would like get rid of some kit over food, because you need to get there, you need to get to the end. So yeah.
For the kit thing, like the advice on the DBR website, I pretty much just followed that. Like I think I said at the beginning, I really don't like camping. So for me, this was like, that was a super challenging part of it. So I just got the kit list. I went to Cotswold Outdoors and I was like, you guys, can you just give me all of this stuff? I need the lightest stuff. So I was obviously the best customer of the week, probably. But so the kit list on the website is really useful. One thing that I didn't bring, which I definitely highly recommend, is like a warm, comfortable shoe to wear around camp, because your feet are not going to want to be in anything restrictive. And all I had were these like slide on like flip flop type things, and the heel had like a raised bit around it to be like secure, and all the blisters were around my heel, and it was just, I had to I went to the medical tent and like cut the foam off the side of them, which slightly worked. But yeah, something comfortable for in camp. And I took a new outfit for each day of the race, which was amazing to put on dry stuff, especially when it like rains, you know, during the week. But a lot of people didn't. So that's probably a luxury that that I went for. But if you're struggling with weight, maybe like a couple of outfits are okay.
Yeah, and things that are going to dry out, like I'd pay the extra money knowing that this is going to dry quicker. Like this year at Cape Wrath, like probably nothing would have dried completely, but at least you've got a little bit lighter. Like I was putting on fleeces and stuff the next day that really should have been in the washing machine. So yeah, as lightweight and as dryable, if that's the word, as you can find. And yeah, definitely footwear for the evening. Something particular, maybe waterproof. I don't know. I'd be thinking like lined with like lovely cushioning or something. I don't know, something just comfy, very roomy, because your feet most likely will swell by the end of the week. Not even if you're not injured, just you're going to get that. So definitely something a little bit wider. And some people, I wore the same shoes, but some people would say to bring a second pair, maybe a half a size or a size larger. So again, depending on the person, if you are somebody, and you'll know this in your training, if you are somebody who does get swollen feet, that's definitely something to look into. And train with your fuel, see what does actually settle well. I went with very normal foods. I just didn't have enough.
Yeah. The shoe thing I would echo. I brought 2 pairs of shoes, and just making sure that those, like, they can be a different size, but also like maybe consider shoes with a different drop height or a different stack height, so that the pressure, like there's different pressure points on your feet. So once you make the change, it's not like you're swapping one pair of like Brooks for another pair. Like you've got variety there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm aware we're kind of getting towards time now. So Shane's done a really good job of answering questions in the chat. There's just a couple of ones that he's answered that I just want to kind of highlight. People have asked about toilets, which, to be fair, is a genuine concern. My mum has said my first question would be about the toilets. So there are, on Dragon's Back Race, there are support at every support point, there are portaloos, and at overnight camps there are portaloos, and there are always female only portaloos as well, which is very, very handy. And then at Cape Wrath, you don't have the support points, but any public toilets that there are marked on the map. And again, there are toilets at all the overnight camps with female only. Someone also asked about our breastfeeding policy. So this hasn't actually come up for us much before, but essentially our policy on breastfeeding is we will facilitate it wherever possible. You know, obviously in terms of not compromising the safety or the logistics, but essentially if you want to breastfeed and you're on an event, we will work with you to make sure that we can make that happen. But essentially just get in touch with us as soon as possible so that we can put a plan in place to make sure that we can facilitate it. And those were just 2 questions that I wanted to highlight. So thank you so much everyone for coming. It's been really, really great, and it's been awesome hearing from Katie and Laura. Thank you both so much for giving up your time to be here this evening. It's been great. And thank you also to Shane, who has very graciously taken a step back this evening and has been working very, very hard in the background, answering all the questions. So if anyone is interested in what we're doing to encourage female participation at women's events, Shane has shared the link to his blog in the chat, which kind of talks about the barriers that we overcome. And I think Laura mentioned having read that as well. And as always, if you have any questions about anything really, please do contact us at the office. Either email us at hello@oureaevents.com or pick up the phone and give us a call. And we're always happy to have a chat. But yeah, bye for now. And yeah, hopefully see you all at events in the future. That would be great. Well,
Bye.
Thanks, Laura and Katie.
Thanks, Eleanor. You did a great job.
Thanks, you too.